Vorrei ringraziare dal cuore Pietro Marani e Maria Teresa Fiorio per l'invito a partecipare in questo convegno. Offro le mie profonde congratulazioni a Pietro e Mia per la magnifica mostra su Leonardo a Palazzo Reale, una mostra once in a lifetime. You are rock stars. Ringrazio il Politecnico di Milano per la gentilissima collaborazione riguardo il mio viaggio e ringrazio specialmente Furio Rinaldi, Research Assistant al Metropolitan Museum of Art, e Rodolfo Maffei, Mellon Fellow al Metropolitan Museum of Art. In più vorrei ringraziare profondamente i colleghi che sono qui elencati. In contrast to Michelangelo, for whom exist at least 6 biographical accounts by authors who knew him during his lifetime, only one of Leonardo's biographers knew Leonardo personally. This is Paolo Giovio, who wrote the Leonardo da Vinci Vita and the excerpts in Giovio's Dialogi di Viris et Femines around 1527-1530 or so. Giovio himself and his texts on Leonardo have received great attention from scholars with very good reason. I note especially the books by Sonia Maffei, Carlo Vecchi, and Barbara Agosti. Therefore, it is important to call attention to a 16th century biographical account on Leonardo that seems extremely neglected. Although Benedetto Varchi's Orazione Funerale on Michelangelo of 1564 is celebrated by art historians as a panegyric on Michelangelo, it also contains fascinating information about Leonardo that goes much beyond the well-known biographical accounts of Leonardo by Paolo Giovio, the anonymous authors of the Libro di Antonio Billi and the Codice Maria Becchiano, and Giorgio Vasari and Giovan Paolo Lomazzo. In this paper, I shall attempt to demonstrate to you the probable historical validity of Varchi's biographical comments about Leonardo in order to resituate this source in the Leonardo literature. Of course, I'm not the first to notice Varchi's evidence on Leonardo in the Orazione Funerale. For example, 1 or 2 scholars writing about the Battle of Anghiari and the Battle of Cascina murals in the Palazzo della Signoria, and myself included, have commented on Varchi's description of how this commission came to be assigned to Michelangelo. And Carlo Pedretti generally cited in the 1950s and again in 1993 Varchi's comment that Giuliano de' Medici treated Leonardo more like a brother than a companion, and I quote the phrase by Varchi, "Lo trattava piuttosto da fratello che da compagno." I shall return to this phrase. The recent Leonardo literature, however, has rather overlooked Varchi's Orazione Funerale. I became aware of the unexpected and greater value of Varchi's 1564 text for the study of Leonardo as I completed research on 2 problems for my publications in 2003. One, the documents relating to Leonardo's employment in Giuliano de' Medici's household in Rome from 1513 to 1516, and 2, the biography of Giuliano de' Medici himself. It became clear to me that Varchi himself also deserves more attention from Leonardisti than is presently the case. Varchi's Seconda Lezione, delivered in March 1546 at Santa Maria Novella in Florence, was published in 1549. Scholars have convincingly observed the debts to Leonardo in Varchi's art theory. Leatrice Mendelssohn, Marco Collaretta, and others have analyzed Varchi's 2 lezioni in detail in regard to the philosophical arguments about the maggioranza e nobiltà delle arti and the question of the superiority of painting and sculpture over one another. Mendelssohn has particularly emphasized Varchi's partial dependence on Leonardo's ideas about the paragone, as recorded by Giovan Francesco Melzi in the Codex Urbinas Latinos 1270. But to return to Varchi's Orazione Funerale, Agostino Ciampelli's painting of 1617 at Casa Buonarroti offers a reconstructed scene of Benedetto Varchi giving his Orazione Funerale on Michelangelo at the Church of San Lorenzo in Florence. Varchi's eulogy was delivered on 14 July 1564 in the heat of summer, almost 6 months after Michelangelo's death, and the text was published a few days later. Varchi himself died a year after Michelangelo. Varchi's Orazione Funerale dates from 4 years before Vasari's much corrected and expanded second edition of Leonardo's biography in De Vite, published in 1568, and which reflects Vasari's personal acquaintance with Giovan Francesco Melzi during a trip to Milan in May 1566. Varchi's Orazione Funerale still preserves the two biographical errors reported in Vasari's 1550 edition of Leonardo's Vita, that said Piero da Vinci was the zio of Leonardo, and that Leonardo died in the arms of the French king François Ier. But these two mistakes should not undermine the validity of Varchi as a source. Varchi's biographical comments on Leonardo span 2 consecutive pages, 54 and 55, in the Orazione Funerale on Michelangelo. In rereading these pages, I was struck by the fresh facts and phrasings with regard to Leonardo, and especially about his relationship to Giuliano de' Medici, which in content goes beyond what is known from the other biographies of Leonardo. Varchi's phrasing seem also different with respect to the second 1568 edition of Vasari's Vita of Leonardo. So my first question was, how and from whom did Varchi get his new information? That is, beyond what content he borrowed from his personal knowledge of Paolo Giovio and Giorgio Vasari, or from borrowing from the printed 1550 edition of Vasari's Vita. It is not out of the question that the well-informed and well-connected Varchi also knew the anonymous Florentine authors writing the biographical notes about Leonardo in the Codice Magliabecchiano and the Libro di Antonio Billi. Paolo Giovio and Benedetto Varchi were intimately acquainted. I propose that a major probable source for Varchi may have been a member of the Vettori family, if not Pier Vettori himself, and possibly the Vettori family papers. Of noble status, since 1400, the Vettori family inscribed in the Libro d'Oro della Nobiltà Fiorentina produced 5 gonfalonieri of the Republic, but its most important members in the Cinquecento found themselves divided in their political allegiances between the Republic and the Medici family. After concluding his education at the Studium of Pisa under the guidance of Donato Gianotti, Varchi continued his studies of Greek and letters with Pier Vettori, the greatest Florentine humanist and philologist of his generation, orator and philosopher who was born in 1499 and who died in 1585. Varchi and Pier Vettori were already intimate friends by 1535 and maintained a close epistolary exchange between 1537 and 1547, mostly as forusciti or political exiles after Cosimo I Medici's victory at Montemurlo. The previous generation of the cousin branch to Pier Vettori were the brothers Francesco and Paulo Vettori, whose careers were intertwined in the years following the collapse of the Republic and the restoration of the Medici family to power in 1512-1513, but who themselves were at opposite sides of the political spectrum. Francesco Vettori was politically tainted by his erstwhile support of Piero Soderini's Republican government, but through his brother Paolo's favor, Francesco eventually secured the post of Florentine ambassador to the papal court in Rome from 29 January 1512 to May 1515, and he also secured the release from prison of his childhood friend Niccolò Machiavelli, who then went into lifelong exile. In contrast, Paolo Vettori loyally served Giuliano de' Medici and his brother Cardinal Giovanni de' Medici, later Pope Leo X, until Leo's death, while Francesco Vettori had fallen from grace with his allegiances to the Republic. We have no portrait of Francesco Vettori. Francesco Vettori, the author, statesman, and Paulo Vettori's controversial brother, who was older by 2 years, provides a first-hand testimony about Giuliano de' Medici in his Sommario dell'Historia d'Italia. Francesco Vettori, Sommario della Storia d'Italia, describes the bon vivant Giuliano de' Medici as più presto da corte che da guerra. And I quote further Francesco Vettori about Giuliano. Si può chiamare non liberale, ma prodigo, perché donava e spendeva senza considerazione alcuna donde dovessero uscire i danari. Dilettavasi avere appresso di sé uomini ingegnosi ed ogni cosa nuova voleva provare. Pittori, scultori, architettori, alchemisti, inventori di miniere erano condotti da lui con tanto stipendio quanto non era possibile pagarsi. It is clear that especially in his years in Rome, from 1513 to 1516, Leonardo was one of Giuliano de' Medici's greatest uomini ingegnosi, as I've discussed elsewhere. I shall quickly show you drawings relating to some of Leonardo's activities, probably in his service to Giuliano de' Medici. The Specchio Storio and the study of minerals and metals in the Paris manuscript G, the map of the Pontine Marshes and Terracina, now at Windsor, the machinery probably to drain these marshes as described in the Paris manuscript E, and Giuliano seems to have especially supported Leonardo's work towards his intended treatise on the Ludo Geometrico. Vettori's words regarding Giuliano de' Medici's affable character and liberality agree with other accounts, for the Duke of Nemours supported the endeavors by other uomini ingegnosi as well, for instance, Fra Giocondo. The Florentine diarist and historian Bartolomeo Cerretani spoke from first-hand knowledge in describing Giuliano de' Medici's character, grave non solo nell'andare, ma nel parlare, benigno, umano, piacevole, gentile, ingegnoso, bonario, amicabile, di debole complessione, misericordioso e liberalissimo. In the letter of dedication, Baldassare Castiglione's Il Cortegiano, published in 1528, eulogized Giuliano for his bontà e nobil cortesia, while Ascanio Condivi's biography of Michelangelo of 1553 referred to La Cortesia e Umanità di Giuliano, based on that great artist's personal account of events in 1494. This brings us to Varchi's sentence in the Orazione Funerale about Giuliano de' Medici and his nearly familial rapport with Leonardo, which also fits with the general description of Giuliano's character, and I quote, Giuliano de' Medici, Duca di Nemours, signore di inaudita bontà, di ineffabile valore, come lo amava, così lo trattava piuttosto da fratello che da compagno. The link in all this from Francesco Vettori's character sketch of Giuliano de' Medici to Pier Vettori, Varchi's mentor, and then to Varchi's words is, in my opinion, Paulo Vettori. Paulo Vettori and his younger cousin, Pier Vettori, that is Benedetto Varchi's mentor, traveled to Spain in 1522, where Pier Vettori collected ancient inscriptions. We have no portrait of Paulo Vettori. Paulo Vettori, born in 1477 and who died in 1526, was Giuliano de' Medici's mayordomo of the household, employed by Giuliano between 1513 and 1516. Here I illustrate one of the household accounts penned by Paulo Vettori, probably in the spring of 1515, and it's entitled Lista della Casa dell'Illustrissimo Signor Giuliano de' Medici, Mayordomo Messer Paulo Vettori. The long account of expenses for Giuliano de' Medici's trip to Bologna to participate in the historic meeting of his brother, Pope Leo X and King François I in Bologna on 11 December 1515, was also penned by Paulo Vettori, mayordomo to Giuliano. The expenses were to be submitted for payment to the curial banker Bernardo Bini. As a visual reference point for this event, I quickly illustrate the Vasari Workshop's painting reconstructing the historic meeting of Leo X and King François I in Bologna in the Sala di Leone X at Palazzo Vecchio. As I proposed, it is almost certain that Leonardo met Giuliano de' Medici many years before 1513, when he wrote his note in the Paris manuscript F, partì da Milano per Roma a di 24 di settembre 1513. And this also adds credibility to Varchi's general words about Giuliano's tratto of Leonardo piuttosto da fratello. From January 1496 to July 1497, during the years of Leonardo's service to Il Moro, Giuliano was with his brother Cardinal Giovanni de' Medici, the future Leo X, at the court of Ludovico Sforza in Milan and later in Vigevano. I quote Marino Sanuto's diary for that year. Il Cardinal de' Medici fiorentino ed il magnifico Giuliano suo fratello, ivi in corte del duca stava come cortesano, da me in una casa separata. Varchi's biographical comments on Leonardo begin with facts and hyperbolic phrasing about him, partly dependent on Vasari's Torrentino edition of 1550, so I will not read you that beginning. But the following statements are most interesting, and I quote, Aveva un intelletto elevatissimo e sempre ad altissime cose intento e in mirabilissime e quasi impossibili imprese occupato, benché alla profondità del suo ingegno o non era cosa nessuna o non pareva impossibile. Aveva oltre all'architettura, oltre alla scultura, per sua principale arte e professione, dirò o solazzo e intrattenimento, la pittura. Era costui aritmetico, era musico, era geometro, era cosmografo, era astrologo, era astronomo, era versificatore, era poeta, era filosofo, era metafisico. Dilettavasi altro oltre all'anatomia e oltre la medicina, così fisica o naturale come chirurgica o manuale, e oltre la mulomedicina, ovvero mascalcia, di tutti i minerali e mezzi minerali, di tutte le erbe, di tutti i fruttici e suffruttici, di tutte le piante e di tutti gli animali, di tutte le ragioni e in specialità dei cavalli, e per ridurre le mille in una di tutte le eccellenze e di tutte le meraviglie così dell'arte come della natura, per le quali doti e virtù fu non solamente avuto in pregio e tenuto caro, ma quasi adorato e inchinato come cosa venerabile e santa, non pure dagli infimi e dai mediocri uomini, ma da maggiori e da migliori principi, e il magnifico Giuliano de' Medici, duca di Nemours, signore di inaudita bontà e di ineffabile valore, come lo amava, così lo trattava piuttosto da fratello che da compagno, il quale Giuliano doveva andarsene a Roma a Papa Leone, suo fratello, non vuole andarvi che egli non menasse con esso secco. It is worth to read the entire biographical account, not just cite one small phrase as it was done by the previous scholar who worked on this. The diversity of disciplines which Varchi attributed to Leonardo in his very compact list of Leonardo's accomplishments is perhaps best encapsulated and made concrete by Leonardo's own inventory of books in his possession around 1503-1505, with its great variety of titles and authors which give testimony to his very wide interests. A good quantity of these books, owned by Leonardo, were most likely printed editions in the Vulgare. The inventory includes the treatises on architecture by Leon Battista Alberti and Francesco di Giorgio. And so what I will say next, these are mostly the aspects that Varchi himself outlines in his small biography. Several books on arithmetic, the two Euclids, Ptolemy's Cosmographia, Regiomontano's Calendario, Albumazar, and a treatise on the sphere, perhaps Gregorio Datti's Spera Vulgare, several books by poets, as well as other types of versified accounts, several Aristotelian works, including the commentaries by Albertus Magnus and Albert of Saxony, the books on anatomy, including Montagnana's De Orina, the Cetam Fasciculus Medicina, the Chirurgia of Guy de Chauliac, and remember that Varchi says chirurgo, a large herbal, the book on stones and minerals, or Lapidario, and the Volgare of Piero de Crescentius Ruralia Commoda. Varchi's vocabulary in describing the disciplines at which Leonardo excelled is notably scientific, especially when one compares it to the other biographers of Leonardo. Varchi especially referred to Leonardo's wide-ranging knowledge of horses, with the precise word of la mulo medicina, ovvero mascalcia, the health care and treatment of horses and their hooves, and the specialità dei cavalli. Giuliano de' Medici's well-known passion for horses was shared by Leonardo, of course. As entered by Paulo Vettori in the extant notebook, numerous expenses for Giuliano's trip to Bologna in 1515 to accompany Leo X in meeting François Ier mentioned the horses and several pages, then the attendance to these horses, and then the spese della stalla. Early accounts document Giuliano's well-known passion for giostre and expensive horses, for he went to enormous expense and effort to acquire fine specimens. To Giovanni Vespucci, Leo X's ambassador in Spain, for example, he wrote in April 1514 about two negotiations. Se quello muletto di che voi mi scrivete è cosa rara, e che crediate qua non trovi paragone, pigliatelo con minor prezzo si può. So he was bargaining. Ricercate a cotesta maestà la tratta per 8 o 10 cavalli gianetti per me, e quando l'arete ottenuta, senza farlo intendere ad altri, lo direte al duca di Berger, fratello del priore di Castiglia. The great early treatises on Mascalcia were those printed in the Volgare by the authors Agostino Colombo and Giordano Ruffo, and one of these manuals probably corresponds to Leonardo's book listed in the Codex Madrid Inventory of 1503-1505 as the Libro di Medicina di Cavalli. At left, I show Leonardo's sheet of studies on the motions of the horse, which to my eye dates to Leonardo's Roman period in 1513-16 rather than earlier or later. It is treatise-like in both its visual description of forms and the accompanying block of text at right, thus conforming, in my opinion, to what might be expected from a draft for an intended treatise on the horse. At right is Leonardo's famous sheet of the Ludo Geometrico with the two sketches for the Stalla del Magnifico at upper right, which I think clearly relates to Giuliano de' Medici's Roman stables and very probably constitute designs attempting to create healthful conditions for his vast number of horses, so the Mascalcia. If Giuliano was indeed shopping for horses in great quantity, it is really no wonder that Leonardo, his court artist in Rome and a lifelong lover of horses himself, was scribbling ideas to account for the numbers of bins for the horses in his patron's stable. In concluding, let me summarize the two most important values I see in Benedetto Varchi's Orazione Funerale as a source for Leonardo's biography. First, Varchi's narration enhances our knowledge of Giuliano de' Medici as one of Leonardo's main patrons. And in this, Varchi has concrete historical credibility because through his mentor and friend, Pier Vettori, that is the mentor of Varchi, Varchi probably had direct knowledge and information about Giuliano from the Vettori family, as I hope to have persuaded you. Second and foremost, Varchi's Orazione Funerale provides a rich statement about Leonardo's multifaceted intellectual activity, narrated with a difference of details that goes beyond what we know about Leonardo from his other biographers, and also in a scientifically credible language for that moment in time in history. Although Varchi's Orazione Funerale of 1564 is indispensable in the study of Michelangelo, the short narration about Leonardo therein deserves a more prominent role in the literature, since it provides yet another perspective on the methods and techniques for constructing our knowledge about Leonardo. Thank you.